this doorpost. Oh, it's such a good back scratcher. Hey, welcome to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. Tonight I've got a great and cool game. And I know, I always tell you that, but hey, we are blessed to live in an age right now where we have all those magnificent games from the past that has come up to us, and we can study them and enjoy them and learn from them. This game I consider a work of art. I mean, it's just beautiful. And I know it sounds weird, right? But I am speaking mostly to a chess audience. People who don't play chess won't appreciate the idea when I call it beautiful art, but you guys will probably, I hope. The game is by Alexander Alekhine. Truly my favorite chess grandmaster, with all the other ones that are right up there with him. And a gentleman named Potemkin. I'll present the whole game. I want to focus on tactics, but I don't want to forget or ignore anything else either. And so I'm just going to go through the whole game and just gab and blab like I normally do. And I will focus more on tactics as they show up in this game. But it's the overall effect of just incredible cooperation among the pieces. Alekhine is playing the black. He says this particular defense against the Sicilian was used by two very strong players in his day, Dr. Tarish and Shigorin. And he said, so we're off to a fine start here at this point. And then Potemkin does something interesting. C3. And Alekhine said this isn't the best move at this point, but what I want to point out is something real interesting. Again, the idea of reading the board. We have a pawn hitting d4. We have a knight hitting d4. We have a black pawn hitting d4. We have a black knight hitting d4. This entire game is going to revolve around that area. And the board, just in 5 moves, we already know what the plans of black and the white are. White is going to try to possess d4. Black is going to try to possess d4. The board actually shows you that. The bishop here is fianchettoed hitting d4. Right? So with that to go on, we've got an interesting game to come up. And because he puts the knight c3, Alekhine develops his other knight. And the interesting thing is, at this point, and we're just barely in the game, Potemkin just sowed the seeds of a defeated game there. And we're just right at the front. This does not address the area, the d4 square. We are going to focus on the d4 square. Yes, we know h5 exists. We don't give a flying flip about h5 in this game. Yes, b8, it's a fine square. In this game, who cares? That's not the point. This square, f1. This square, c4. This square, a5. None of them are going to be focused on. This is the area. You can tell just the way the pieces amass point to a specific square, can't you? See, that's not so hard to read a chessboard. The reason I'm bringing this out again is because the tactics are going to be associated with controlling that square, if not outright possessing it. And so this is basically basic information that we need to know to grasp the tactics, right? Potemkin just completely wasted. Alekhine is already better developed in a much stronger central thrust than Potemkin. Aaron Nimzovich, when an opponent ignores development in the center, in the opening, you punish him. How? Watch how Alekin does it. Bam. D5. Absolutely. In fact, in his commentary on this game, after he made the move, he put, "Of course," with an exclamation point. What Potemkin should have done was that move. Right now. Take the square. But he didn't. He played the wrong series of moves, and it cost him. So he does take the pawn, and Alekin takes it with the knight. So here's the situation at this point. Finally, Potemkin comes down here to the c2 with the knight. Now the knight is hitting d4 with the pawn d4 and the other knight d4. So Potemkin has basically kind of recovered, but not really, because look, he's moved his knight once, twice, and this was the move, I do believe, yes, that gave Alekin the initiative. Because, well, the last move was the move that gave him the initiative. And notice, as we go on, if I don't mention this again, if I get all wrapped up in what I'm doing, understand what the initiative is. The initiative is you're pushing your agenda. That's what Jeremy Silman calls it. You know, you are making the game the way you want it. And from this point on, the way Alekin plays, Potemkin plays reactionary, defensive chess. And Alekin is always on the offensive. It is astonishing to watch how he does this. Now he makes the move. d4. And Alekin says in his commentary, he says the problem with this move now at this point, it wouldn't have happened this way, but it did now, is he simply, Potemkin, simply gives himself a weak, isolated queen pawn. Isolated, meaning there's no pawn on this side and no pawn on this side to support the pawn. And so pieces have to defend him. Now the idea with isolated pawns, I need to make some videos on these. I thought I did, but I don't recall. If you are fighting against an isolated pawn, you must blockade it. Observe the knight. Beautiful. You must, once you've blockaded it, attack it. Observe the attack. And technically all this has to do is dodge over hearsay, and you've got a third attacker here. So it is blockaded, and it is attacked, and it is weak. True. Potemkin has 1, 2, 3 defenders, but notice they're defending. Now his plan shifts to reaction chess, because Alekin's going to fight this pawn with everything he's got. It's an amazing situation. As a general rule, when the isolated pawn falls, it collapses the game of whoever has it. And it's the oddest thing, but look, it's the only thing in the center, pawn-wise, right? You break that down now, since Alekin is much more strongly developed than Potemkin is, Alekin would mow him over. So Potemkin must defend that pawn. It switched from a square to a pawn. Fascinating how they make this. With that in mind, observe Alekin's masterful stroke. I now attack the pawn. And you go, dude, you gotta get a clue, right? The bishop's on the white, white, and the pawn here is on a dark square. Bishops go on diagonals, Professor. The pawn sitting there on a dark, that's not an attack on the pawn. Yes, it is. Here is one of the most beautiful first tactics I want to show you. And this is actually almost always seen. It's seen a lot, but it is a critical tactic. And for this game especially. The bishop has pinned the knight to the queen. And you say, I know that. Observe. The knight is defending the isolated pawn. By the bishop pinning the knight, he reduces its effectiveness to reply to another piece if that piece is attacking that pawn. Therefore, this pin weakens that pawn even further. That is an attack on the pawn. And it's a wonderful tactic, the pin. Just want you to be aware of that. Okay? And so you go, oh, yeah, nice move. Yeah, nice move. But to what effect? All you have to do is push F3, dude. It's no big deal. Bam. Bishop gone. Okay. Agreed. Now I will attack the pawn from this side. You go, dude, really, he didn't switch the diagonal. He's still on the white squares, and that pawn did not move. It's still on a dark square. You're not attacking the pawn now. You're running from the pawn attacking you. Not true. Observe. The bishop is now going to take this knight. And this knight is also one of the guardians of the pawn. Now watch. Let's say white moves. I'm just doing a supposition to show you. The bishop takes the knight, eliminates one defender, and the queen takes the bishop and leaves only one defender on that pawn. So this is, and I repeat, this is an attack on that pawn. Truly. And Potemkin knows it by his next response. But before I get to that, look at what Alekhine has accomplished with this bishop move. Just understand. The pawns... Oh, sorry. Yeah, move the pawn back, dork. The pawns are moving. On the king's side, where he wants to castle. So this bishop thrust is creating weaknesses on the king's side, which means the ability to give more tactics. Right? So he's accomplishing more than just weakening this pawn. He has weakened the entire king's side. That's important. It's an interesting strategy, isn't it? Using that tactic of the pin, you have to unpin that knight. You have to unpin that knight. By the way, did I say you have to unpin that knight? If not, I will say it. Because that has to be accessible to this pawn. Therefore, he's forced to push the pawn. Isn't that remarkable? Now, technically, you're right. I'm wrong. He could have put the bishop there, but... what for? He'd just take the bishop, right? I mean, everybody knows that. I'm just saying. He was forced to push the pawn, which weakens that side. Very important in this game. That's something to keep in mind for your games, right? F3, bishop F5, attacking the pawn. Here we go. The knight knows he's going to be taken. And see, this kind of helps us understand something else that always puzzled me in my childhood when I first learned chess. How do you know which piece to take? Have you ever asked that question? Really? Seriously? If you had an option, look at this. He was pinned a minute ago. He moves his knight out of danger, and now he gives us the tactic of forking the knight and the bishop. Well, how do you know which one you want to take? It's very important. How do you know which one you want to move? You want to move that knight guy. Otherwise you're had, right? So throw a tactic on him. Now one of these two pieces are gone. That's a knight fork. let's say you wanted to keep your bishop. This is not good. No. You never want to block your own pawn, especially a central pawn. Leave that pawn open to expand. Truly. From here, that's pretty passive. You have the initiative, see? You're putting together an attack because you know he has to defend, right? So, this is a waste of time. Go home. This is too passive. That's not what you want to do, right? This is just, that's just not good. That's not good chess. So, a little dicey with the bishop. With the knight, I mean, just for kicks and giggles, bump him over here for a moment. It does open it up so that the queen can hit him, the knight's still hitting him, and the bishop's still hitting him. So, you still have 3 hits there, but you don't know which one to save, right? Another issue I want you to remember that this bishop has done now, not only has he begun moving the bishop, or the kingside pawns, look at what he's done here with forcing that f3. He has literally clamped down the influence of his own bishop. This bishop is really excellent. This bishop is a lot better than this one. And this bishop is a lot better than this one. Right? Observe things like that, and it kind of helps you with what candidate moves you need to examine when you're looking for tactics. That's the key, right? But you notice how helpful it is to know how to read the board, right? Okay, enough preaching. So anyway, knight e3. And which one do you move and which one are you going to lose? Alekin went here, queen e5, queen a5, check. A phenomenal move. Yes! That is phenomenal.
But Mr. Backyard Professor, sir, all I have to do is put the bishop in front and block the check.
That's true. But were you to do that, then I would take the knight on e3.
But Mr. Professor, sir, all I have to do is take your queen.
That's true. However, I would take your queen.
But Mr. Professor, sir, I did use my rook and I developed my rook and I'll take your knight and I'll defend the queen pawn.
That's true. And then I will take your bishop. Now observe the board here. White is a piece down. So, the idea of putting the bishop in front isn't really going to work. Like I said, phenomenal power move.
Mr. Backyard Professor, sir, all I have to do now is do my queen instead. I'll block the check with my queen.
True. But then I'll take your knight on e3.
But Mr. Backyard Professor, then I'm just going to take your queen.
True. But then I'm going to take your bishop and go check.
But, Mr. Professor, all I have to do is move the king right over there to touch the knight because there is no escape square, so I get your knight.
True again. And I get your queen.
And then I get your knight.
True. However, if you look closely at that board, even with the queen block, white is now a piece down. So not only will the bishop block not work, neither will the queen block. That's what makes that move so spectacular. As I said, phenomenal. So nothing works to save his castling privileges. So he comes up to f2. My suspicion, he wants to leave this open for his rook. Maybe he's going to artificially castle, you know, pull the rook over here and then drop the king down, whatever. But see, if he goes to here out of check, I mean, he knows his bishop is blocked. And now he's going to block his rook. That's really not good. I mean, that's 2 pieces down and you're playing Alekhine. However, I got to admit, this is one of Alekhine's early games. This was before this was played in 1912. I should have said that. So this is an early game. He's a youth here playing like this. It's just amazing. So queen a5 check and the king moves over to f2. Now here is where we get, this isn't a tactic as such, but it is a prelude to good tactics. And you go, for Pete's sake, why is he attacking the a2 pawn? He's not attacking the a2 pawn. He doesn't care about this corner of the world. Not at all. He's looking this way. He's aligning his knights up so that they can team up together and land on the right squares. So he's looking ahead several moves, something Alekhine was exceptionally good at. That's one reason I love playing through his games. Really, seriously. Well, what do? What? You forked? He chose to keep the knight, right? So, I mean, you forked him, take the bishop. That is a good acquisition. Truly. That's a great acquisition. Now, the queen zippity-doo-dahs across and eliminates the knight. So now she's over this way. And white says, you know, that is strong. I really don't like my queen there, so I'm going to attack the queen. Well, your queen has to move. Where is a good square, right? Now realize that you've had the initiative. You notice he is reacting to where Alekhine is going, right? If you drop back, the nice thing is you give an extra hit on this weak queen pawn, which is the whole point of this exercise in this game. So you have 1, 2, 3 hits. You've got the bishop backing up the queen. So that's a possible square. When I looked at this, I rather really sincerely like this one. Really, I did. Does 3 things. When he moved his knight out, the pawn was no longer blockaded, right? You have to blockade the isolated pawn. So by pulling the queen over here, you blockade that pawn. Also, you do a great centralization of the queen. The queen radiates power from the center. That makes sense, yes? And you hit the pawn. So you still have 1, 2, 3 hitting, and you've only got 1, 2 defenders. You notice he's whittling it down. That means that pawn is getting weaker. When that pawn collapses, if it collapses, white will lose. It is such an interesting phenomenon in chess. The isolated pawn is a study all of its own. Well, when for instance here, you don't, this, you know, you're backpedaling, you're not hitting the pawn. Yeah, you're keeping this, true, you hit the pawn, but you're backpedaling, you know. There's less, you can see the power difference with the queen here, right? And the queen here. Please tell me you can see the difference. Seriously. So, Emanuel Lasker, the former world champion, said, when you see a good move, and I think that's a pretty good move, when you see a good move, sit on your hands and find a better one. Well, he wasn't world champion for nothing. So, we're being attacked. I'll show you what Alekin came up with. He went check. Notice where he came from. Look at this knight fork. Not only is he keeping the initiative, he's making forcing moves. That is, white now has to either take the knight or respond by getting the king out of check. That tells you Alekin has the initiative. He is pushing his agenda. King, bishop, b-pawn. That's a knight fork. A very effective one. Well, king has to go here. So the king is on a different square. Does that affect where we'll put the queen? It could. I don't know. Let's check. Can't go here, here, because the knight. Again, you could drop down. I don't know. Again, this centralizes the queen, blockades the pawn, hits the pawn. That's one I saw. Alekin finally takes the pawn. The pawn has fallen. Look, what I didn't see was the queen is shielding the knight, and therefore this knight is not in danger of being taken anymore from his queen, and so now it's time to take the pawn. Bam, he pulled the trigger, dead pawn. And this is the decisive moment. Alekin said so. And when Alekin said it's the decisive moment, he wasn't joking. True story. Really, seriously. Very nice. So, hey, wait a minute. Yeah. He ignored his queen. That was what I wanted to show you. And, you know, this takes real good calculation. Real good. Because I gotta confess, I don't know if I would have done that. I really probably would have saved my queen. I'm a weaker player. That takes guts. Truly. But Alekin did it. Right? So the queen is gone. And now what do? You retain the initiative. Right? Check. Notice something? I want you, just once again to remind you, just to let you know. The bishop has not moved. The rook has not moved. The bishop has been caged in most of this game. No influence out here whatsoever. The rook has not moved. Now I want you to notice something else. The rook has not moved. But that's only one piece that Alekin has failed to bring in. He failed, well, four pieces. We're seeing the difference. The more pieces, just honest logic, 4 pieces out in the field have a greater, higher probability of coming up with good tactics than just one. Right? I mean, if any of you are studying statistics, you could do a statistical study on that and demonstrate that, obviously. I mean, it's just simple logic sense. So he puts check to the king. And the king comes straight up. Now, Alekin wants to drive the king to h3. He wants the king to be to h3. Watch how he does this. h5, check. Now, if Potemkin isn't careful, if you do this, you've got the bishop to h6 mate. So you can't go any further up, right? So you're kind of pretty much stuck with going the other way. This square is off limits, the knight. This square is off limits, this knight. This square is off limits, that knight. That only leaves you, guess what? The target square. And why did he want to do that? Because he wanted to give us one of the most beautiful checkmates in all of chess. That is so beautiful. I mean, that is a work of art. I'm telling you. Look at that knight fork. On the mating move. King, rook, queen. Fantastic. Alekin does this more often than not. He had such a mastery of tactics, variations, combinations, and coordinating his different pieces. Again, his bishop exerted influence for most of the game on that pawn to force white to stay here and defend it. You notice these two pieces really didn't do a lot except defend. You notice this piece didn't do anything. 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 Did anything do anything in this game? That's the power of the initiative. Being able to read a board to see where we're going to focus and then give it your all to focus there. That is a fantastic illustration of really superb tactics and strategy combined. So that is my video for you today. I'm going to make you a challenge. Yeah, I got a challenge for you. And I'm telling you, I know whereof I speak on this one. I do. Try to do something kind to someone who's not even expecting it today. Hey, you don't even have to know them, right? Open the door for someone. Give someone a smile. Give someone a good old shoulder hug, arm around them and say, you know what? I appreciate you. I like you. You're awesome. Just try it. It might really shock you. It's a lot of fun. So anyway, thanks. Be good. Be kind. Do well. Have fun. Don't sleep in. 8 hours of sleep a night, and that's it. No more sleeping in. We've got chess to study, right? All right, I will see you guys in the next video. And by the way, I don't even know hardly any of you, and I love all of you. Thank you so much for all of your kind comments. I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful. So I will try my best to give you the best with chess, because I appreciate you. We build each other up, we're a chess brotherhood, and then we take this enthusiasm and this excitement and this happiness and this joy that we're doing while we gather learning chess together. And you take that and pay it forward. Pay it forward to other people who are having an off day or a bad day or in a bad mood or whatever. Right? It's fun stuff, I'm not kidding. See you next time.